followed by the phantom. He finds you.
This is Expand, the Phantom Podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favorite podcast apps. Do not forget to give us a rating on your podcast app and also tell a mate about us. This is episode 298. This is the episode where we review the year 2024. We try and do it in 2 hours. We're kidding ourselves if we're going to try and do it in 1 hour, but we'll try and do it in 2 hours. We'll go over the tale of the tape, highlighting every comic and merchandise that's been released around the world in 2024, and then go over our favorites. Today, we've got our regular contributors giving their input, so look forward to seeing what they have to say. So let's get into it. So, the tale of the tape from King Features in the USA, and we're talking worldwide here. I know it says USA, but worldwide, it's the newspaper stories. There were 4 daily stories, one that started in 2023, and there were 2 Sunday stories, one that started in 2023. So, of course, these are a bit long and written by Tony DePaul, of course. So only the 6 newspaper stories to get us going. But then we got Frew. How are we going with Frew there, Dan?
Yeah, Frew have a very regular schedule of publishing, and just to go over that in terms of the regular issues or the standard 32 pages or whatever they are. There's 26 of those books, issues 1961 through to 1986, and very excited that in 2025 we're going to see issue number 2000. So that's pretty cool. Across those 26 issues, there were 17 different cover artists. So again, a wide variety of artists that Frew are putting together. Frew created their own stories, of course, as they have done since the new Frew crew took over. But we certainly saw a drop off in those. So there were 7 Frew commissioned stories in 2024. We haven't seen those numbers since 2020, actually, when there was 7. In 2021, there was 12. In 2022, there was 15. And last year, 2023, was really the high point with 21 brand new Frew stories, but dropped right back off the cliff, I suppose, back to 7 this year. We'll see as we go through some of the results in the surveys later on that those are popular stories. So be interesting I hope Frew get back to the bigger numbers. The Shane Foley's Bad Blood story series, for instance, and Operation Domino, which was an 8-parter, we're counting as one story because it's one story with just a bunch of chapters.
Could we just quickly inject, and we don't want to do this for every subject because it will get very, very long, but quickly, do you think we will get to those high numbers of 15, 21 again, or do you think we will stay at a more lower number of, say, 7, which we saw in 2024?
Oh, I think the fact that Glenn Ford has taken a step back, and he was the creative director and commissioned a lot of those stories. We were probably lucky to get 7. I reckon we'll go backwards from there unless things change and he takes a greater role. Unfortunately, that seems to be the direction they're taking.
Yeah, we'd want more, but lucky if we get them.
Yeah.
Frew did continue to publish some stories that we have not read before here in Australia. So there were 23 of those, which is the same number as last year. And in 2022, there was only 11 of those type of stories that have previously been published elsewhere in the world, and often in a different language, and so were published for the first time in Australia and often in English. 3 of those were Sparta stories from Italy, which is a bit of an increase. 2 Lightning Strike stories, which was we hadn't seen that at all before, so a couple from Ireland, and stories that had previously been published by Frew, and so essentially a reprint in 2024. There's 24 of those stories, which is a little bit down from 2022, for instance, which had 28. Those are often in the annual and the replica series, so those reprints. So 47 stories all up. Slightly down on numbers than in any of the last 6 years. Across 2019 through to 2023, we saw anywhere between 54 and 69 stories. So to be down into the 40s, 47, is a bit of a step back. But as I said, Operation Domino, which was 8 chapters and across 8 books, was only one story. So you've got to factor that sort of stuff in. Giant Size Phantom continued to be published. So there was 4 of those issues. Across those 4 issues, there were 7 Phantom stories to accompany the rest of the reprints of Frew's publishing history. That's pretty similar last year where there was 8. There was 4 in 2022. So to see 1 or 2 Phantom stories in each Giant Size is good. Overall, it seems that Frew is slipping into that regular 31 type books per year. I guess 2018 and 2019, when we saw Kid Phantom Giant Size, we had that spike of 38, 42 books in about that 5-6 years ago. But since 2021, really, we've had those 30 or 32 books per year. Whether it depends on whether they do a trade paperback or not. But essentially, Frew seem to have found their rhythm of 26 regular issues and 4 Giant Size a year. That's been the case over the last 2 or 3 years.
Well, good. Now, for some fans, they're probably getting confused with a lot of these numbers. We will try and produce a tail of the tape on our website in the show notes, which you can read as you try and follow, because we are rattling off a lot of numbers. The mathematicians will like it, but some fans might not. So hopefully it's not too confusing. So we're going to move over to our Scandinavian area, and specifically Sweden. So they had 19 regular issues. They had 3 trade paperbacks, 4 replica hardcover books, which are kind of like, it's the same concept as the Frew replica series, but they collect half a year or a quarter of a year at a time, put it in a hardcover with some articles and stuff like that. There's 1 hardcover collection. This year it was the Pirate Queen saga with David Bishop and Kate Somerset. And then there was 1 Phantom story in another magazine, which was the X9 magazine, which we did talk about in our last Comics and News, and there's also an article on the website as well. So from a stories point of view, there was 7 different cover artists, which is much higher than in previous years, and that was due to Henrik Solstrom took 2024 off. Well, it wasn't a complete year, but seeing he wasn't doing the majority of the stories, there was the ability for a new artist to actually do cover artists. So like, I think in 2024, there was 2 new cover artists, Cassie Nye and Johannesson. And then there was also Raphael Ruse that did another cover as well. Now, there was 9 new Team Phantom Men stories, and one of those is a 2-parter, and 1 is a short story. And 9 is about kind of where they have been going on in the last 3 or 4 years. It's been going anywhere between 7 and 9. So that is kind of like the sweet spot where they do. There was 3 new Frew stories published by Team Phantom Men. That is a lot less compared to the last 2 years. In 2023, there was 9, and 2022, there was 7. So it's interesting why that was the case. But I think one of the reasons that it might have been the case is that there was also 5 other stories published by other publishers that had never been published before. So this is 2 from Bastille, 1 from Lightning Strikes, 1 from Turkey, and there was also a Filming Italian story as well, which was the one that was published in the X9 magazine. So that's most likely the reason why Frew only had 3 stories, because that's still 8 other stories published by new stories, not published by Team Phantom Men, if that makes sense.
And it might also reflect that Frew are producing fewer stories themselves as well. So there's fewer for Team Phantom Men to access.
It's a very good point. So there was 5 new newspaper stories, and that's a little bit less than the last couple of years. So from 2019 to last year, the minimum new newspaper stories was 8. But again, the reason for that was because in the 90s and the early 2000s, Elf Granberg didn't publish any new Team Phantom Men stories. So all the early Tony DePaul stories and the late Lee Falk created written stories were never published before until in the last couple of years. So that's the reason why that number is a little bit higher than what it was in 2024. In 2024, there was 13 repeat stories, and that is less compared to previous years. There's been as high as 20 odd stories. So, when you compare 13 to 21 and 2020, where there was 21 and 24 repeat stories, that means you're getting a lot more new stories than what you have been in the previous years. Now, in 2024, there was 34 stories altogether, which isn't too much less than what Frew were producing. 13 of those were repeat and 21 of those were new. So that's almost two-thirds of the stories you're getting are new stories to to everyone. Compare it to the last 3 years, you're getting more stories than what you have for the last 3 years. So that's pretty cool when you think about it that way as well. You are getting more Phantom stories than you have probably in the last 4 or 5 years.
Back over to the US. So back over to me. So Hermes Press, they released 2 daily collections, and they were released in April and July. Again, to be the pattern is down on previous years. 2023 there was 5, and that was the same for the last 3 years, really. And then it got up to 8 in 2020 and 7 in 2019. So a little bit less there for Hermes. There's been no Sunday hardcover books since May 2021. That's quite a bit of time. Is there any reason for that, Jerm?
An unofficial reason that I've been told is that they're having trouble sourcing newspaper strips from that era. Personally, I'm not sure if that's true. The Sunday ones require more work because they're in color. They're more expensive because they're in color. And the daily newspaper stories are obviously, I think more newspapers actually carried them. So I think they're easier to produce. And then I know Frew, because a lot of the stuff that they are printing now is the stuff that Frew and Ed Rhodes peaked. And then I can't remember, Bob Griffin and some of these guys are the ones that they actually found in archives in universities. And then that's how King Features got it, because of what these guys found. So I wonder if we will actually see Sundays again.
Oh, well, I hope we do, because they're an important part of Phantom history. Now, there are continuous rumors about the art of the Phantom and a coloring book, but we haven't seen those yet, have we?
No.
And hopefully Hermes can come through with that, and more of their good quality hardcovers. We don't want to see Hermes go down the drain and not produce those excellent quality productions.
I really do hope that Hermes are able to at least finish the run of the dailies. They're up to 1988, so they've done 50 something years of Phantom books so far. They've only got 11 years to go to tie out the Lee Falk era, so maybe they could at least get that done. And I'd love to see them come up to speed. Surely it's going to be a lot easier once we hit the internet age and all of those things are ready to go. So I guess it just depends on how popular they are and how well they sell.
Yeah. So you raise an interesting point about would they go to the Lee Falk era? That probably would be a good cut-off time. I always thought that may be Cy Barry, but I think the Lee Falk cut-off would probably be the best option.
So the best option would be to keep going, but if they got to cut off early, that'd be. Now, Hermes aren't the only publisher in the States. We've also got Comics Review, who released 6 issues. 2 had Phantom covers, which is up from last year, or 2023, but on par with around about where they do. Usually do about 2 or 3 a year over the last 4 or 5 years. And now our new studio, new publisher, Mad Cave Studios in the USA, they've had 4 issues and 1 trade paperback. Now, granted, they're really Defenders of the Earth, not really the Phantom, but there is a Phantom issue coming out next year, which we've spoken about, with issue 0 coming out for Free Comic Book Day on the first weekend in May. So we look forward to seeing what's behind the cover.
Sure. So India, there were 7 comics produced in India that we know of anyway, in 2024. So 4 of those came out from Regal. So they're regular issues, and in the English language. And Shakti had 3 issues, one of which was published in 3 different languages. So really accessible to the broader population there. It's certainly fewer issues coming out of India than we've seen in the last 4 years, sorry, the last few years at least. Across those 7 books, there was 4 cover artists, all of them local Indians, which is good to see. Across the 7 issues, they were all or newspaper stories, 8 of which were Cy Barry's, but one coming into I guess, the more modern era, which we've just sort of alluded to as a Tony DePaul story. So not big numbers coming out of India this year.
So let's start off with Germany, which probably do, besides Sweden, probably do the large majority of Phantom stories in Europe, which have been around for 2 or 3 years now, and they're doing some amazing work in Germany. So for Zubistan, they had 6 regular issues, so they do them bi-monthly. In those 6 regular issues, they have a real spread of stories collected from around the world. So there was 7 of them were newspaper stories. One was a Frew story. 4 were from the DC USA series. 3 were from the USA Charlton series. 4 are from Herms. 0 of the stories are actually from Team Phantom Man, but the reason behind that is because in the Superstorm comics are selling that well that in 2025 they're actually releasing a new series that will just focus on Team Phantom Man stories.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
That's great news.
yeah, so it is very good news. And as
And
you
we
will
can do it
see,
in 3
there's been a
stories.
lot of new publishers and stuff like that, which you will see towards the end of the tape. Now they've also, in their Flash Gordon series, they've also republished the Full Defenders of the Earth series as well. And they actually printed it twice. They did a special convention kind of comic series, and then they did it in their regular comic book shops and retail Flash Gordon series as well. So that's pretty cool. So in 2024, they released 19 stories altogether, in their 6 issues, and that includes part stories as well. In 2023, they released 21 stories. So it's a good, healthy number of 19, 21 over a year. That's a lot of comics for Zubiston readers. Um, now
Particularly for a
in
new publisher as well. Like these guys have only been on the block for what, a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're up to 16 was the last one. I think for our review comes out around the time of this podcast. So yeah, so 6. Yeah, so you do the maths. Wick, which is another publisher. So they're the guys that are publishing or republishing, remastering, restoring the old Bastille comics. For those who have come in late, you can find out full details on our website, but they have found previous unpublished Bastille stories that were never published before, and then from a specific artist who recently just passed away in 2024. And so they've released two for that series. There's 12, I believe, in the full series, so there's probably about another year worth of those. Now, some of these stories have been republished in Phantom Man, and we believe, according to the rumors and according to what we have been able to gather, we believe that Frew in 2025 will also publish some of these as well. And then there's not only are those 2, there's 3 other German publishers as well. So they've got 5 publishers publishing the Phantom, the most of any country in the world. There was a publisher that did these beautiful hardcover and a softcover edition of Minton, John Vaz Minton book stories, which are very popular. Most fans love them. 2023, we saw the French guys, a French publisher, do it with book plates and everything like that. So a German publisher has also done that. So they published their second one of those. Zach Edition have published the fans. And again, if you're on YouTube, we're going to show all these covers while we're talking, so you're not just looking at our faces the whole time. So there was a couple of those, and then ECR, which are the guys that do the AI generated covers. They did a hardcover, 7 regular issues, and also a supplement issue as well. So there's been a lot of Phantom in Germany, and we've got reviews of all of that on our website.
Very good.
Have we ever got to the bottom of how Germany has 5 different publishers doing the Phantom? Because our understanding has often been one publisher per country. There was a whole, I nearly said a bad word. There was a whole firestorm in America between Moonstone and Dynamite, and the kerfuffle there. There was only one publisher maybe left standing. It'd be interesting to know the story of how Germany's allowed to have 5 different publishers and everyone else gets one each.
Without taking too much time, okay, they've all got different licenses for different stuff. So, Wick is doing Bastille, which is a separate publisher. ECR are doing newspaper, old classic Barry stories, and Zubiston are doing a more newer stuff from like the 90s and stuff like that. So they're not feeding from each other's ponds, so to speak. So they're all doing different little things over here. So I think what it is unless you're getting an exclusive license, which gives you exclusive rights to be the only publisher, i.e. Egmont and Frew, i.e. you pay a little bit extra, you can publish your own little area. So I think that's what's happening. I don't have official word from King Features on that, but in talking to Zubistan and the guys from Wick, that's from what I understand.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay, sticking over to that part of the world, or in that area anyway, we've got Norway, who released one 1 year album. I think that's what all they do nowadays. Finland, they released 2 softcover albums. Spain had 1 daily reprint, which was a hardcover. Italy had 2. They had 1 daily reprint, which is a hardcover, and the other one was a trade paperback. And right next door in France, there was 1 trade paperback and 4 comics, one with a Phantom cover. Right.
Just to wrap up the rest of the world, I suppose, so to speak, there was a bunch of countries that also had 1 Phantom comic that came out this year. So Brazil had a hardcover Wilson McCoy themed book. Denmark released a hardcover collection as well. There was a trade paperback come out of Greece. Hungary had a hardcover collection of Cy Barry stories as well. And out of Ireland, there was a Phantom annual, as well as a bunch of digital comics coming out of there. So it was smaller numbers, but still a wide range of countries.
Yeah, you make mention of countries. Now, I'm not sure if this is a true reflection of how well the Phantom's doing, but over the years we've collected this data, and it's interesting to see. You go back, there was 14 in 2023, there was 14 countries have published the Phantom in 2024. Now, if you look at the numbers, in 2020 there was 9, 2021 there was 11, 2022 there was 12, and in 2023 there was 10. So in 2024 there was 4 new countries in Hungary, Greece, Denmark, and Ireland. So they all have published the Phantom before, but they have all started republishing the Phantom. So the way I look at it is it's a good reflection of, from a worldwide point of view, that the Phantom is being published around the world again. So that's countries. Now, if we nail that down a little bit further, 2024, there was 112 comics released throughout the world. So if you
Is that
think
more than any
about,
other year?
yes. So the next highest was last year, which was 105. And if we go all the way back to 2019, there was 76. So if you're thinking about in 4 years, there's a quarter or 25%, give or take, more comics produced around the world than there was 4 years ago. So that's a pretty healthy increase.
That must be sending you broke in postage, Jim.
Look, we joke about that, but I physically cannot purchase every comic from around the world anymore. So yeah,
That must
you're
be
right.
doing
And
your
if
head in.
yeah, it is. But there's a lot of other completists and stuff like that. Like like the completists that like collecting all the comics, like they'll message me or something. They'll go, "What about this one?" And it's like, "No, I've decided not to do like that one." And then they're like, "Oh," and then I say, "Have you seen this one?" And they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know that one existed." And it's yeah, look, it's great to see. So at 112 comics, that in every single week there is more than two being released around the world in every single week.
Mm. Mm.
So that's a great way of looking at it. However, if we do want to look at pure numbers, which I do think is a little bit of a worry, and we kind of mentioned it before, is that there was only 22 brand new stories in 2024 compared to 35 the year before and 30 the year before that. So out of the last 3 years, there's basically 10 less new stories. That is a little bit of a worry, in my opinion.
That's the tail of the tape. And in some parts it looks healthy, other parts we think it could build up again. But now let's talk about our favorites. And this is often, one of the favorite parts of the year is looking back and see what did we actually like. We can talk about what we don't like later, but this is a real positive part. So, excuse me, the criteria is yes, we can select reprint stories. Doesn't mean that we have to. As we discuss issue numbers, if you're on YouTube, you'll see the cover come up. If you're audio only, we'll try and say the cover artist for your information. We thank Christian and Mikhail and Sayuj and Scott, who have commented on their own country's comics to give us a better worldwide view in 2024. Chronicle Chamber is nothing yet worldwide. So let's start off with best Frew cover. Germ?
I have 1985, which is the Lauren Marshall cover. Now, I'm a little bit biased because that's actually a cover that I actually purchased. That was my Christmas present to myself. What I like about that is the angle. Like, I love the Phantom diving from that tower crane. The sun behind it is just really impactful. 1986, which is the Christmas cover from Alex Tripp. It's fun. I think Christmas should be fun, and I think when you have kids, you kind of realize that Christmas should be fun. You're going to get a better appreciation of that, and I think every Christmas cover, I kind of wish that Phantom Men produced Christmas covers for their Christmas theme covers for their Christmas albums. I just think I think it's a great idea. I know Dan's written an article about it as well. And then my other one is the Brazil giant size cover, and that's not just because there's two Brazilians in their
Mardi
glorious
Gras.
Mardi Gras cover. It's just again, it's a fun cover. It captures your attention. Yes, and part of that is because there's two girls in bikinis. But the cover captures your attention, and yeah, I just really like that cover.
Look, in no particular order, my top three, I've gone with different ones from German. I guess when I'm looking at this, part of how I think about it is how would that look as a poster? Would I like to see that blown up and up on the wall? And I've got a few of those around the house. Look, for those, I love issue number 1965, the Luca Alberta cover. The yellow pops and really stands out as well. And I just really love Luca's work. 1981, the Grange Wallace cover. I would love to see that as a big A2 size type poster. It's just so dynamic and running through and having the bullets firing after him. It's something that close up on the Phantom's face that's on the front cover, we don't see so much. And then you open it up and have the full wraparound, and it's just brilliant. I love that. And then I guess slightly different there is 1975, the Timo Wes cover or covers, because he's got the front and the back cover, not wraparound, but again, just something different that we don't always see. And as I sort of mentioned earlier, earlier of loving the variety that Frew produced from their cover artists this year. I've gone a couple of honourable mentions. 1974, Daniel Picciotto. I would love to see that as a wall poster in the same sort of style as we saw the Christopher Weil and the Nicholas Scott posters in the past. I think that would be amazing, that size. Jamie Johnson's issue 1983. I do love the way that he wraps things around and uses the two faces. And as you've mentioned, Germ, the Christmas cover from Alex Tripp in 1986, I think is just I'm a sucker for a Christmas cover. So
Yeah. I've done a few honourable mentions as well. I'll start with those. So 1961, issue number 1 for 2024, the Jason Paulus, really because I thought it set the tune for what was inside it really, really well. 1965, Luca Roberta, which I think you had in your top 3 there, Dan, for the exact same reasons you did. It was very hard for me not to have that in my. This is really the hardest part of picking the favourites is the covers, because something that Frew does well are the covers. They knock the majority of them are knocked out of the park, and it's really hard to just pick 3. So hence the honourable mentions. Way to find a loophole somewhere. Timo Wertz, the 1975. I particularly like the back cover of that one. Which Germ mentioned for exactly the same reasons that Germ said, and love the Christmas cover as well. But that's in the honourable mentions. My top 3 in no particular order. 1974, Daniel Picciotto, like you had. You was your honourable mention there, Dan. I went for a Grange Wallace 1977, the commission piece, the black and white on the skull throne, and it was great to see Jamie Johnson back. So 1983. Part of my criteria is that I can only pick one from if an artist has got multiple, and even though I might like multiple ones, I can only pick one from each artist. So Grange, who did a couple, could have easily had a few more up there. I think Lauren had a couple, didn't she, as well? Which were really good.
It's also making mention of that Luca Roberta one, which you have both talked about. You know, he was actually selling the original of that in December. I'm not sure if it's been sold yet. Maybe drop him a message because it might still be available.
It's a really nice one. I have to go look myself. So usually he's got 1979, 1977, and 1984 for his favourite covers. So we go to our survey results. For the best Frew cover survey results, we've got coming in at number 10, 1968, Lauren Marshall. Number 9, 1983, Jamie Johnson. Equal 7th, we've got 1965, Luca Roberta, and 1985, Lauren Marshall. These are all covers that we've already mentioned as well. In 6th position, 1977, Grange Wallace. Issue number 5, I don't think we've mentioned this one, 1969, the Marcello Baez cover. And 4th position, the 1986 Alex Tripp, the Christmas cover. In equal 2nd, we have issue 1973, which was by Jeremy McPherson and Thomas Mason, and Giant Size 30, which was another Jeremy McPherson. So congratulations, Jeremy McPherson, taking out second prize with 2 different covers. And placing in at number 1 with almost a third of the votes, we have issue number 1974 with Daniel Picciotto. So congratulations, everyone, particularly Daniel, but well done on everyone for your outstanding cover this year for 2024. And thank you, Frew, for getting in such quality artists to do their covers in such a variety. It's not just one style. There's a range of styles. And I, for one, really appreciate that.
None of us mentioned Jeremy McPherson, either of those 2 covers as we went through. And maybe we've become too used to his work over the time. He's been I think he was the very first cover artist that they used, wasn't it, in the new Frew crew, and had a lot of covers, particularly the first.
The Scorpio story, I think.
It was the snake.
I'll try to remember the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's really, we've become very used to his work. Maybe we the three of us, or maybe I'm certainly guilty of overlooking his because I'm more used to it. But certainly he's got a classic style that clearly people like, with both of his covers getting in the top three.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to make mention there's out of those top 10 covers, only one is from someone from overseas.
Yeah,
Oh,
interesting. Not sure why I've been selected to read through the Fantomen covers. I don't collect them, but certainly enjoy seeing them each year. And as Germ said earlier, having a variety of cover artists this year made it, I guess, in some ways easier to choose because you see styles that you like on the screen as I chose them. But Mikkel Sol obviously is our Scandinavian correspondent, and he's closest to the action and would, well, along with Germ, obviously, have physical copies of these. He selected issue 6, 7, issue 12, and issue 18, 19 as his top three covers, and can certainly understand why. They're all fantastic. Germ, as someone who actually gets these in physical copies in your hands, which three did you go for?
So for me, it was issue 10 and 11. 11. So that's by Rafael Ruiz. It's kind of like a retelling of the Phantom origin. And like where you make mention of you love the hero type of images, the Phantom type of images. I also like, I think the origin is really, really powerful. And so to have this in a different style than we've seen before. It's iconic. It doesn't actually feature a costume Phantom, but you know it's a Phantom cover. So that really looks great. The Prince Rex soft cover album, which is a picture of the Phantom and Rex shooting an arrow. Again, that's kind of iconic. It's family. It captures the love and the care between the Phantom and Rex. And I think Luke has done a great job in capturing that which is then portrayed throughout the stories that Lee Falk has created. And then the last one is Phantom Man 20, which Henrik Solstrom is in his Kit Walker garb. He's pointing two guns, but just it's close up, it's powerful. But then there's little bits of detail which you might not notice when you first look at it. But like if you look at his glasses, you see the reflection of what he's looking at. And it's just clever, it's iconic. And so yeah, so that would be my third one.
It's interesting having a look at the books for 2024, and as you said earlier, Germ, Henrik Sahlstrom is not producing anywhere near as many covers this year. But in the three that I picked off the screen, two of them are his. So I clearly come to like a particular style of Parliament cover. Issue 1 was great. It's got the twins, and seeing them in action again. Yeah, I guess in the same way that I enjoy a good Christmas cover, I enjoy seeing the twins, and I enjoy those stories and seeing that on the cover. I love the way the Salstroms portrayed those. A very different style would have been issue 6, 7, with the close up of the Phantom, but sort of half his face in shadow, and the deep red really stood out to me as well. And then issue 25, was it 25, 26, is one of Henry Johannes as well. And that's just an iconic Lord of the Jungle type legend of the Phantom type pose, crossed arms, like we all like to do in our photos when we get together as Phantom fans. But from an angle that we don't necessarily always see, sort of up and backlit in a nice yellow. So yeah, so those were my three.
my top three from Fanderman will go issue number 20 with the Kit Walker with the guns, and I like the reflection in the glasses as well. You said issue 25, 26, and I've got to agree with you there, Dan. I think for exactly the same reason, iconic pose, but from a different angle, and that's why I like that one. You did mention the issue 6, 7 where he's in shadow. I had a bit of a closer look, and you can almost see an eye there, and he's half a skull. But no, I'm not going with that one. Um, And I almost went with, there was another one which I thought looked good in small, but then I blew it up and I didn't like it quite so much. But what I did like when I blew it up was the Phantom 1415, where the Phantom with the yellow backdrop there. So that one stood out to me.
Oh, it's from Janice Auden, who we recently interviewed on a podcast.
Yeah, and just to finish off, Swayze's nominated issues 14, 15, the same as you there, Steve. Issue 10, 11 as well, and issue 5. So 10 and 11, I guess, has got a sort of a fire or a sunset color behind it, which I can certainly see why Swage likes that one. I think you mentioned that one as well, Germ, as the origin telling, and having a close up look at that, you can certainly see why. And number 5 was the last one of Swage's there, and I guess having that Phantom either about to get completely trodden over by a raging bull elephant, or being supported in his war by a raging bull elephant that's coming up to get the baddies as well. It's a pretty powerful cover as well, so it's pretty cool.
All right, so talking about Suarez, we are now going over to look at the best Indian covers for 2024. Yeah, he has chosen Regal 37, which is by Rajan Dushan, I think it is. That's kind of like you're looking up and the Phantom's jumping down on the bad guys. It's a really nice action shot as well. And then Shakti 13, which I think is a great one and one of my favorites as well, where it's got the fire in the front. It's got a real heavy, dark kind of pose with the bright moon, and then you got in the background, and you got Devil in front as well. So it's a great cover. That's my favorite, along with Regal 35, which is the Christmas special for 2023, but it was actually released in 2024. So that was my two favorites. Dan and Stephen?
Yeah, look, when I guess there's only 7 books to choose from, it makes it a bit quicker, but and maybe a bit samey. I've also gone for Shakti 13 for all the same reasons that you've said there, German. What I liked about Regal 35, the Christmas cover, which is my other one, was the way that Unkit Mitra has done that in terms of the boxes in the shape of a Christmas tree with little vignettes, I suppose, into different. It's not one pose. He's been able to get a bunch of poses, almost like family photos, in the shape of a Christmas tree. So I really like that one.
Can't go past the that Christmas cover. I think that's awesome. And I can't remember the other number, but it had a elephant in the background.
Yeah, Regal 38.
Up again. I like that one. So those are my 2 picks.
Awesome. So Christian, who is our German reviewer, who does an amazing job buying all the comics and reviewing them on our platform. So huge thanks for Christian. His favorite cover was ECR 90, which is maybe a little bit controversial in the sense that some people suggest it is actually a AI generated cover. It features Mr. Walker in his garb with Devil, and then it's got a heroic picture of the Phantom with the gun as well. If you look past that they are potentially AI covers, some of the covers are quite striking by ECR, and a lot of the German ones are actually covers that have been created for other mediums as well, like Herms and the Turkish publishers and DC and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's a little bit different going by that. So yeah, that was Christian's favorite. Stephen?
All right, now we head back over to the States, and Scott has got his favorites down here. So starting off with Mad Cave Studios, his best cover was Defenders of the Earth #3, which I haven't seen yet. I know it's sitting in my comics shop waiting for me to pick up. His reason for Defenders of the Earth #3 is while Defenders of the Earth 2 might be the only Phantom focus cover of the first 4 issues, the 3rd issue has a tense and alarming feel that encapsulates the enclosing shroud of mystery and danger of our heroes. It also features all 4 defenders in an ice prison-like backdrop, with one of Ming's ice soldiers towering above. It's subtle, but the red glow of Ice Soldier's eyes could be hinting at Octon, who commands Ming's and Crotan's forces, and is often associated with red word bubbles.
I love watching Scott's reviews. He definitely thinks you can tell he writes because he picks up a lot of stuff that I think a lot of the casual reader would not pick up and read. So if you read it and then watch his reviews, you might actually pick up and enjoy the comic a little bit better.
So Scott's favourite comic review cover featuring the Phantom was 455, 456, and he said that the reason for that is plain and simple. The cover is a classic. We have Phantom and the Devil in the foreground, staring out at the readers with Devil making direct eye contact. They're draped by the jungle, but what makes this cover beautiful are the rays of sunlight illuminating the backs of our hero and his faithful companion. In the darkness of the jungle, this light that washes over our heroes highlights their goodness. It's a little cliche, perhaps a little schmaltzy, but for fans, this might just hit the right note of what a hero is.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Scott, for quite insightful comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Much more insightful than ours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerm, do you have a favorite comic from the States or cover song from the
Okay,
States?
so I'm just kind of going over the whole of the USA, not kind of doing one from each publisher. So mine would be Comics Review 463, 464, which is the Phantom Christmas one. This features the Phantom, Tarzan, and a couple of other characters doing a Christmas tree with some presents in the jungle. It's what's interesting is both of the Comics Review covers featuring the Phantom are actually done by Jeremy McPherson, including the one that Scott explained. So for me, that's that one. I like Christmas covers. I think they're fun. I think they actually sell. I do like that one. And the other one I liked is, and the second one that I like is Mad Cave Studios issue 2B, which features the variant cover designed by George Dokovich, who is the creator, or is the designer of the NECA figurines. And there's a great little symmetry between Mad Cave and NECA. I love how they've included these as variant covers. And in knowing George, when we spoke to him on the podcast, he had a great affinity and a great love for Defenders of the Earth. And so I'm sure he had fun creating those as well.
Yeah, that Mad Cave 2B makes it into my one of my favourite covers as well. And I've told the story many times on the podcast about how that Galoob figure was my first ever Phantom toy and how much I love that. And he's still sitting on a skull throne over there somewhere, in worse for wear shape. But I made sure that I got one of the toys on the card, and to see that on a comic book cover, I just can't go past that one. I'm going to agree with Scott in terms of the Comics Review cover issue 455, 456. I do love the Christmas cover as well, and having the Phantom there with the other characters decorating the tree is pretty cool. But I guess what gets 455, 456 over the line is that the Phantom is actually the focus of the cover, whereas the Christmas one, he's just sort of off to the side with his hands on his hips. So, both by Jeremy McPherson, and we've talked already about how his work is really appreciated in Australia. Great to see that it's being appreciated in America as well.
Very good. Okay, Swaraj, for his money, he likes, once again, 455 and 456 from Comics Review. And bucking the trend, he's gone for Mad Cave Studios 1C. I can't remember what that cover is, but I'm sure it's coming up on the screen right now. For myself, you can't go past the Mad Cave Studios 2B, the Galoob figure holds such great memories for all of us. And I'm going to go to Christmas cover from Comics Review because I like Christmas covers. But just having a look, I do like that wedding one too. So it's a hard one to pick.
Yeah, no. Now, speaking of hard ones to pick, the next category is favourite cover that is not Frew, so it's not Australian. It's not Fantomen, so it's not Swedish. It's not Indian, and it's not German. And it can't be American because we've had that as well. So if you take the 14 countries and remove 5 covers, what's your favourite from the other 9 countries, which means you've got to either buy those and get them into your house, as Germ does, or go to about 1,000 different web pages and look at them all. And to be honest, I haven't had the chance to do that. So I think, Germ, on behalf of Chronicle Chamber, you might have to be one who talks about the best covers from around the rest of the world.
Okay, well, there's 16 covers to choose from, so there's a decent couple. I think only one, two, three of those don't actually feature the Phantom. So if you narrow that down even more, there's 13. For me, it will be the Task Force Annual, which is from Ireland, which has got the Phantom, Mandrake, Flash, Prince Valiant, Popeye, and Dennis the Menace. It's a type of cover that you will see on Comics Review. It's got a bit of everything. The other one that would be close to getting one of my votes would be the Phantomette album, which is the Old Man Moz telling the story of the Phantom's End, where he's walking to India slash China slash Nepal area, and then you've got Kit Jr. as the terrorist, or with smoke and stuff like that. It's very eerie. So that's a pretty close second. There was also the Prince Rex one that I talked about from Sweden as well. But the other one that does get my vote will be the Greek cover from the trade paperback, which features the Phantom. Is probably a little bit too muscular, but I do like the fact that it's a cover that we haven't seen before. A lot of these other covers are covers that have been repurposed. So I like the fact that the Greece publisher has gone, no, we're going to create our own Phantom cover. It's from a local Greece artist. So, not only he's going to have people buy this issue because he's drawn the cover. And, it's not just another cover that's been repurposed. So I like that as well. All right, so we've all done covers from around the world. There was 112 comics to kind of pick through, so that was a lot. Now we're going to go through and do some writers, artists, and stories, and a little bit of other type of stuff like that as well. So hopefully you're still with us. Hopefully you're still awake. Get out your milk stout, which we know the Phantom does drink, so that might keep you awake for a little bit longer. And Dan, I believe you had some as well.
Yes, I did enjoy a couple of milk stouts over the Christmas break. I might send you through a couple of photos that you can add in for this area, Jim. I took a milk stout down to the beach. I had one with my Christmas lunch. What I learnt from Australian summer Christmas perspective is that I think milk stout will be a great winter drink. It's a very hearty brew and not necessarily made for an Australian summer, probably more for sitting around a fireplace or in an old English pub, perhaps. So I've put a few on ice. And I'll bring him back out in winter, I think. But a tasty drop, none.
or for our Phantom End readers, Swedish and Norwegian readers from Germany and all that, while they're reading their Christmas albums. So the best writers. So we've got it's just the three of us that have chosen for this one, and this is worldwide. Now, while it's worldwide, I'm being very patriotic, and I've just chosen Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. And that would be Duncan Munro, Matt Kime, and Shane Foley. Now, normally we do choose Tony DePaul and all that. And I'm not saying he didn't write well this year, but for me, I like what these three guys have done in 2024. Duncan with the Operation Domino stories. I dare to say that they are perhaps the best collection of stories or one story that we've actually seen in 2024. I think he almost captured it perfectly. There was one or two little things that I didn't quite agree with. And I can report that he's still friends with me, even though I disagreed with the way how he wrote that, which was in our last review. He did listen to it. He did say, "That's nice. I'll still be friends with you, but I disagree with you." But that's okay. We like when our listeners or our viewers or the followers disagree with us. So you're allowed to disagree with us. Matt Kime, I really liked what he did with the Enter the Phantom story, where he did prequel or the filling in the gaps with this first story, which was the Sing Brotherhood story. I think he really nailed that. And then Shane Foley with his Bad Blood. Again, I think he managed to tie in a lot of open-ended stories and kind of wove them together and added successfully to some Lee Falk lore or some empty holes, potential empty holes that Lee Falk had created. And so I like how he did that, and I just think they were a little bit higher than some other creators like Andreas and Tony DePaul as well.
I will nominate Tony DePaul. Look, I do need to say that obviously when I think about the best writers, I can only go from the stories I've read. I've read all of the Frews and I read the King Features newspapers, so that's what I'm judging from. So Tony DePaul, I loved the collection of Graham Nolan's stories. Obviously, he was the writer for those in the Frew Annual. The Christmas special also featured a bunch of the newspaper stories. So between that and all of the stories that are on Comics Kingdom or being released throughout the year, you read a lot of Tony DePaul, and he just I love the way that he treats the Phantom. I know that he's done some controversial things, like having the Phantom have some alcohol with the milk stout, and I think it was more last year, showing the Phantom's eyes. And he probably grinds a few people's gears, but I really love the work that he puts out. Duncan Munro, for all of the reasons that you mentioned with Operation Domino, I loved that 8-part story. What I loved about it was the way that it was published, and that Frew, I think, published those 8 parts across like 12 issues and just pumped it out. I think 5 of them were in consecutive issues. So it really gave you a chance to dig into the story rather than have it so spread out, which really helped Duncan's writing stand out. I think and I've said in reviews before, it has hallmarks of Commando comics. He obviously knows his military history, and I like the fact that he managed to place the Phantom in a historical event, that being World War II, and get involved with historical figures in a really dynamic and free-flowing way, and not getting bogged down in the detail, which I've been critical of some writers for in the past. And my third one would be Matt Kime, for all the reasons you said about Enter the Phantom, and everything I've heard about. I can't wait to dig into the Phantom video game as the writer for that as well. Everything that I have heard from Ash and from Matt, and have seen in the short snippets of the game, I think we're going to love the writing that he's done for that as well.
So he might feature in next year's as well with the. I don't think the computer game can qualify for 2024, but I think it definitely will qualify for 2025.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Mine are the same as Dan, for very much the same. In regards to the Tony DePaul stories, particularly the Rack and Ruin saga, which featured in Frew's Christmas issue, I went back and got out last year's Christmas issue, as well as was it the 75th anniversary, which all had the Rack and Ruin saga. So I read it from start to finish in one hit, and really was able to appreciate it a lot more than what you can just reading it day by day. But I've put in a couple of honorable mentions. Mikhail Soul, the issue, I've forgotten the name of it. The one with the artist plagued by demons and that type of.
Oh, the one where you kind of deal about depression and stuff like that.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And Peter Anderson, I put him in. I think it was the Bat in Berlin story, which I really like. I want to make sure I put that one out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, two good shouts as well.
Right, yeah. What about now? A writer is fantastic, but this is a visual form of media. We need an artist. So, Germ, who are your favorite story artists?
Okay, so I've gone Janice Alden. He is probably my favorite current Phantom artist. We were quite lucky to be able to interview him recently. So if you like Janice, go watch, listen that podcast. I believe we might be doing some other stuff with him, some video content and stuff like that in 2025 as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. Now, from a goodie, from an oldie, would be Don Newton. There was a a couple of reprint stories of his as well. Honorable mention will be Graham Nolan and Daniel Picciotto, um, and Alex Silviak as well. It's hard only choosing two artists because you feel like you know, if you've got, say, like three kids and you can only choose two, you're kind of leaving one out, and then you always feel bad for leaving that kid out or something like that. So, yeah, it is hard only choosing two in these.
Yeah, look, I went with Graham Nolan and Jeff Weigel as my two. I guess I know Graham Nolan is not a current Phantom artist, but as I just mentioned, the Frew annual showcased was the second in the two annuals that showcased his work. And to have that collection of Graham Nolan's Phantom work is pretty special. I'm really glad that they did that. Because you really got a good appreciation for his art style, and it was published in 2024, so it counts. And Jeff Weigel, I just love the way that his artwork in the Sundays is pretty fantastic. And while I haven't necessarily enjoyed everything about the current Sunday story, and the name slips my mind at the moment of that story, but it is that historical style.
Princess of Shanghai or
Yes.
Songhai?
Yeah, correct. I'm loving the way that Jeff is illustrating that. He gets his Thousand Warriors in scenes, he gets his campfire scenes. Yeah, I really love Jeff Weigel's work. Alex Saviuk, you mentioned he was probably the other one for the story that he had in Frew this year. Thousand Graves, yeah, was the one that I was considering there. So those Nolan and Weigel were my top two, though.
Yeah. Now,
Now,
sorry to cut you off there, Steve, but you make mention of Jeff Weigel. Now, big call, but will he go down as the best Sunday Phantom artist?
well, beating
Like
Barry.
well, I reckon his Sunday work, I think it's getting to a point where it could almost be argued that his Sunday work is better than Cy Barry's Sunday work.
Ooh.
Well, I know if I know anything about Jeff Weigel, he'd be absolutely humbled by that comparison or by that statement.
Just look at their Sunday work, right? Just not everything that they produce. Like Cy Barry, definitely over 33 years, and stuff like that. But if you just look at the Sunday work, I think Cy Barry's dailies are a lot better than his Sunday work. And so if we're just comparing Cy Barry's Sundays, Ray Moore's Sundays, Wilson McCoy's Sundays, everyone else's Paul Ryan Sundays, Graham Nolan's Sundays, Jeff Weigel's. I reckon very soon, especially if he adds another 10 years, he's already done over 5 years. So if you add another 10 years, that's 15. So if he does 20 years of the Phantom producing top quality work like he is, I reckon you could argue that his Sunday work could become the best Sunday Phantom artwork.
I think you have stumbled across a podcast topic there, Jim. I reckon we write that one, record that later this year, because that's certainly worth a deep dive, I reckon.
Sorry to cut you off, Steve. I'll let you go back to your
Well,
best story
for,
artist.
for what it's worth, Danny Picciotto for his starting off the Operation Domino. When the artist changed, there was really a bit of a
But
jarring. Yeah.
I think as we got to the end of it, I think I think we've kind of discussed it that it was jarring at first, but then when we got to the end of it, we really enjoyed the artwork, and I think it worked quite well.
I never really enjoyed it. Like, I
Okay.
appreciate it, but I much prefer Daniel.
Yep.
And I went for Nolan for the in the annual. I thought really great work, but it's really really hard to pick that one. A number of well, very 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 a lot of great work was published, and we're just talking about Free Comic. A lot of great work was published. There was some not quite so good, but on the whole, everything was great. Okay, best overall. Who's doing this one? Dan.
Best story, yeah. So we've looked at the best story published by Frew. That was another one of the questions we asked in the Frew survey, that the best of 2024 survey that has wrapped up recently. we'll give the results of that shortly. But the best story published by Frew, and we went through, I think there was 47 stories published this year. Which were your top three, Germ?
Okay, in no particular order, we have Enter the Phantom, Operation Domino, and The 5 Days of the Dragon. I loved that story when it was first produced by Moonstone. Only one of those stories was actually illustrated by Graham Nolan, but I would go as far as saying that was probably one of Moonstone's best stories that they ever created. And so that, yeah, when Frew published that again, it was kind of cool. Enter the Phantom, Operation Domino. We've talked about it. Why they were my favorite writers for the year. I think they both smashed it out of the park. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're top two for most fans.
Well, they're certainly top two for me. I had Enter the Phantom in a particular order. I had Enter the Phantom by Matt Kime as my favourite story for the year. As you talked about earlier, Germ, the thought that he put into that and the creativity in going, right, well, let's get to the start of the Sing Brotherhood. And for him, I'll remember for a long time turning over that last page, and the large splash page to finish that story is the start of the Sing Brotherhood story. It's really well done and built up to it perfectly. So, yeah, I guess that's again why Matt would be up there with my favourite authors, and the fact that he's drawn this one as well. You don't get a lot of artist and author combinations, or the single creator, and Matt has just knocked it out of the park for mine. We've talked about Operation Domino almost ad nauseum so far, and it slips into number two for me, for all the reasons we've said on the reviews and discussed so far today. I guess a new one that we haven't already discussed comes in at number three for me, and that'd be Dungeons Undone by Tony DePaul and Mike Manley. It was in the Christmas issue, one of the chapters in the Rack and Ruin saga, and I really enjoyed rereading that one in a collected fashion, and just I guess the prison break type aspect of it. I enjoy those sorts of stories. So I'll give a couple of honourable mentions as well, because three is bloody hard to do. And both of these are because they hearken on, I guess, what I would see as traditional Phantom tropes or traditional Phantom stories. And they both sort of have callbacks to Lee Falk type stuff. The first one was in the annual, the Graham Nolan specials, the Iron Python by Tony DePaul and Graham Nolan. And the ghost, or the ghosts who were driving the train through Phantom Country, and Phantom turning that one around. And we've also already sort of half mentioned it, The Valley of a Thousand Graves, which was a Jacob Habnick and Alex Saviuk collaboration. Again, the Phantom going in and helping a jungle tribe. But I liked, as I say, callbacks to Lee Falk, but also the modern twist on everybody understanding the environmental aspect of that. It's not all just supernatural and superstition. So I enjoyed that story. What about you, Steve?
Well, two have already been said, with End of the Phantom and Operation Domino. But my third, sorry, no particular order for me, but my extra spot goes to The Devil in Stockholm by Mikhail Sol and Jan Vlecki.
I think that's a great call out, Steve. And in talking to Mikkel, who some of the themes that were touched upon in that issue is quite real to Mikkel. I think he would probably get a bit of a buzz out of hearing that we've talked a lot about it in this podcast as well. One of the things that I also like, you talked about, Dan, you talked about how your stories, they're typical Phantom tropes in dealing with, tribes and stuff like that. The other thing that I think maybe sometimes we miss in some Phantom stories is the Phantom's human, but he deals with real life problems. Like in the 80s, We saw, like slave trading, drug trading, deforestation. We saw the Cuban Missile Crisis in the 60s. We saw dictators being overthrown. So, there's real life problems that are being dealt with in a comic book, and to be able to see a real life problem that is so real that it's almost taboo to a lot of people being touched upon in a Phantom story, I think is yeah, I think it's a great call out, Steve.
Oh, my pleasure. But what about the survey results there, Dan?
Yeah, so look, as I said, this is a lot of what we talk about is based on the or predicated around the survey as well. And thank you for everyone who contributed to that. In equal 10th place, we had 4 stories share 10th place in the best story. A couple of Lee Falk classics from the replica series, The Maharaja's Daughter and A Mysterious Passenger, tied with 5 days of the. Hang on, that can't be right. That is not right. So it's a 3-way tie. My apologies. So those 2 stories, Maharaja's Daughter, Mysterious Passenger, and Bad Blood in Bengala by Shane Foley, which is pretty impressive given that it's only parts 2 through 6 of, I think, a 12-parter. So the fact that we didn't have the beginning or certainly the second half of the story this year, and for it to get into the top 10 is kudos to Shane there. We do have a 4-way tie for 6th place. Then, and so from the very first story of the year, Ghosts of Ships Past, parts 2 and 3 by Andrew Constant and Jason Paulos, is in 6th place there. One of the other stories from the Graham Nolan annual is the Viking Fortress Mystery, which comes in 6th there. The King of Beggars by I'm going to get this wrong. Per G. Hivston and Carlos Cruz is there as well, and Royal Hero by Peter Anderson with Shane Foley on the artwork. That came from 1972, which was the 2000th actual printed Frew, was in that one as well. And I think those would be mostly Chris Hill and his mates voting for that story, I think. It's a good story, but I think that's where the votes came from. In 5th place was Of Men and Beast by Andrew Constant and Jason Paulos, again from issue 1961, right at the start of the year. We had a 2-way tie for 3rd, and in 3rd place was 5 Days of the Dragon, that multi-part story which was in the Graham Nolan special. Germ's already waxed lyrical about that one. And The Bat of Berlin by Peter Anderson and Janis Orden was in 3rd place as well. With almost 1/3 of all entrants voting for it. In 2nd place, we have Enter the Phantom by Matt Kime, and the top story, as voted by the people who chose to vote, with nearly 45% of all voters choosing Operation Domino as one of their top 5 stories. So really, you said, Jeremy, you wouldn't be surprised if Operation Domino and Into the Phantom were our top 2. They were, and by a reasonable margin too. They were well ahead of 3rd place and the rest.
Yeah, now I just want to spend 1 minute of my time. If you just want to comment, you can. But if you look at the top 3, so Operation Domino, Enter the Phantom, and 5 Days of the Dragon, and Bat of Berlin, that equals roughly 9 out of 10 people had those stories in their, 9 out of 10 basically had those stories as their favorites. And 3 of those 4 are. Yeah, and 3 of those 4 are all Frew created stories. So if Frew are thinking about not producing Frew created stories, hopefully this will be a big alarm bell or a big flashing amber light that, yeah, wake up, whatever analogy you want to use, that Frew readers of the small handful that voted, we're not saying that every Frew reader voted on this poll. We're not saying that at all. But of the ones that voted, they like Frew created stories. So, and Team Fan, the Sparta stories were not in the top 10 at all.
Look, it bats deeper than that. There were 7 Frew created stories published this year. I've just read all of them in the top 10. It goes out to top 13 by the time you've got that top 12. Sorry, by the time you've got that tie there in 10th place. So 7 of the top 12 stories were the 7 that new Frew stories. So people love them. People love them.
And they don't
Yeah.
just love them because they're Australian; they're actually good stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And without looking, so out of the top 10, there's some newspaper stories, there's a lot of Team Frew stories, and then there's some Team Phantom stories, but there's no Sparta stories. So, they're nice to have sprinkled, but if by the message from the publisher that we look like we got in 1987, which we'll touch upon this when we do our January's comics and reviews, by the hint or by the hint that I read in Dudley's Message of the Phantom that 2025 is going to be the year of Italy. I think that's going to be a very, very bad call.
Well, it
Yeah, I'd like to
remains.
talk more about that, but now's not the time.
Yes, now's not the time, but I just wanted to throw that in because we've just talked about the best of 2024, and I think it
Let's keep it on the
highlights.
best.
Yes. So so we'll move on. So the best Team Phantom Men story now, and the best Phantom Men issue is what I'm going to touch upon. Now, I read very poor Swedish. I got to use an app for that. So Ivan Peterson reviews the comics for us, but he had some family commitments that he couldn't do it. So Mikkel came off the bench and helped us with this one. So a shout out to Mikkel and also to Ivan who do their reviews for us. So his best Phantom story was The Mark of the Phantom, Peter Anderson's two-part story, which is The Killer and the Ghost, which features art by Alex Suviak, and The Dagger of the Child King would be his honorable mention. So they're his favorite stories from 2024. His best Phantom Man issue, besides the hardcover edition, which is kind of obvious. So, but he's gone Phantom Man issue 14 to 15, which includes a classic Team Phantom Man two-parter story and a new Team Phantom Man story as well. So you've kind of got some classic stories and a mix of a new story in one issue. So for Mikkel, that was his favorite issue of 2024.
Well, yeah, going over to India with Swaj, we've got The Presidents from Shakti number 12. And for his best Indian issue, it's Regal number 35.
And in Germany, Christian has sent his votes over. And as we've discussed, 5 different publishers to choose from. He has said that the best story was in Zach Comics number 1, Captured from Above, and the overall best issue, which is as I say, a lot more complicated, I guess, than best Frew issue. He's gone with the Cult Comics book, the Mitten book number 2, and Jeremy spoke about how widely regarded Mitten is as an artist, and that would be the reason for that, I suspect.
Yeah, review for that is up on our website as well. A little bit late on that review, but it is out there. And if you're wondering what's this Mitten book that we've been talking about, or you can go and have a look on our platforms as well. Okay, so the best Frew issue.
In no particular order, 1961, Ghosts of Ships Past, End of Man and Beast. Started the year off well with a wholly Australian issue. 1969, End of the Phantom. We've spoken about ad nauseum already tonight. And 1986, the Christmas special for me.
Yeah, I've picked 2 of those as well. The Christmas special, I'd always enjoy getting those newspaper strips collected into a book. I say that all the time. So that special was one of mine. End of the Phantom was probably the issue 1969. That was my only regular issue that made my top 3. but for me, the annual special was probably the pick of the bunch. You know, over 200 pages. I've said about how great it was to have the Graham Nolan stories collected, the Moonstone story, 5-parter, to have that gathered, and for me to read it for the first time was pretty cool. And as much as other people don't like them necessarily, I do enjoy collecting the replicas as well. So replica 34 attached to that, just the icing on the cake.
Fair enough. Well, I've bucked. We did have the option for going for three, but I've just gone one. For me, there was one standout, and that was Enter the Phantom, which was issue 1969. In my personal opinion, that should have been the 2000th issue with a reprint of the Singh Brotherhood.
Yeah, I agree.
That, and I I don't have confirmation on this or official word, but unofficially, I wonder if the Frew 2000th issue kind of crept up a little bit on the guys at Frew, and then they were like, oh, what are we going to do? And then we've gotten that, which it was good, it was fun, but I think it missed the mark. And I think if there was a little bit more planning, a little bit more being aware of what was coming up. Maybe they could have gone with what Matt created, chuck in the Singh Brotherhood. They kind of merged together. You could have maybe put in the a childhood of the Phantom story as well, and it would have been a nice little origin type of issue. And I think that could have worked quite well as the 2000th issue. Now, what you, the voting public, voted for, 23%, almost 25% of yous agreed with what we've all said, and that issue 1969 was the best. So that was a fairly obvious one, but we better stick with what everyone else has done and gone from 10th to first. But so 10th was equal 10th was issue 1974, which was the Bat of Berlin Part 1, which also had Bad Blood in Bangala Part 6. And issue 1981, which was the Coast of Chains, which also had an Operation Domino story as well. Ninth best was issue 1979, which was Seventh Icon by Claes Ramufi, Carrie Lapinan, and also had an Operation part, which was chapter 3. We have a two-way tie for seventh spot, which was 1976, which I think was a bit of a surprise, actually. Highway Robbers and Operation Domino story. And then issue 1985, which was the conclusion to the Operation Domino series, and then also had Unknown Fratella, or had a Fratella Sparta story. So, as you can kind of see, a lot of these issues had Operation Domino stories in them. So I think that's probably why they've kind of crept up into the top 10. But enough of Operation Domino. We should charge Duncan $1 every time we've made mention of it. We might be able to retire. Issue 6 most voted issue as by the public was Giant Size 30. Fifth was the Christmas special. I must admit, I was kind of surprised to see the Christmas special only at number 5. Number 4 was the Bat of Berlin Part 2 and also an Operation Domino Chapter 1. So the Bat of Berlin was in the top 10. So part 1 and part 2 was in the top 10. So I think that's worth making mention of. That was a story created by Peter Anderson and Janice Auden. So it was very popular as well. Equal second at just a touch over 16% of voted by all fans is the 2000th issue and also the 2023 annual special. And as voted by you, the public, at almost 25% was issue 1969, which was Enter the Phantom by Matt Kime. I think this is the second time he has gotten the best issue from as voted by the public. So either he's got lots of friends on social media, or he really does hit the mark.
So yeah, congratulations to Matt for being top of the pops there. He has also had success in the Best of Frew Honor Board. If we go back to 2022. The Matt Kime Shane Foley collaboration was the best story, and he was also second place for best story in 2022. And even back as far as 2019, Matt was second in our best story poll. So a lot of success in our best ofs over the years.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, we're almost finished.
Very good. All right, so we've had all the stories, all the artwork, all the creators, and that's been fantastic. Now, let's check out the other stuff. The fandom is more than just stories, it's merch as well. So, best new merch for 2024. There's a mixture of licensed and not licensed stuff, so we'll have a look at both. We've got the Noir Phantom lithograph set editions by Dante, artist, what was his name? Willie Hudick. We've got the Icons Collectibles bust. We've got the Fashion Creek Indian T-shirt, the Phantom Fundraiser Jam print. Was that the Jamie Johnson one?
Yes.
Yep, very good. The beer cans. Oh, I forgot about the beer. The finished items, such as
Key rings, T-shirts, stickers, scarves, tote bags or library bags,
all that little fun stuff.
Yes, all that fun stuff. We've got a review of that stuff coming up soon as well.
Very good. The Phantom and Subscription Towel, the Comics Kingdoms items, and the Shakti Comics Calendar. Looking at unlicensed stuff, we've got the Elastowit Army Man style figurines. I released a new bunch of those. Yesterday's.com pin, Lee Falk biography book, and the IP Comics Calendar. So, Germ, what took your money, or what would you like to spend your money on?
All of it took his money.
Yeah.
A lot did take my money. I think of the ones that didn't was the lithograph by Editions Dante, the T-shirt from India, the beer can. Oh no, I've got the beer cans. They're sitting with me. The subscription tower, the two calendars, and the Alista with Army Men, and that's all that didn't take my money, unfortunately. So mine will be of the finished merchandise. Really enjoyed that stuff. I've actually just received a sample of some of that stuff from them for us to review. So that video will be coming up on our platforms very, very soon. We do have some stickers, which will be our Patreon prizes for 2025. So if you were not able to purchase these from Finland, they are going to be our seasonal giveaways for 2025 for our Patreon, which is very, very exciting. So the one out of those that I like would be the stickers and the key rings. Key rings are quite good quality. Like them a lot, and the stickers, everyone loves stickers.
Oh, for me, it was the Jamie Johnson fundraiser print, which was through the Lee Falk Memorial Bangala Explorers Club dinner. I guess like Jern with the Frew cover earlier, I've got a little bit of excuse me, the Dean Rankin piece, which I really love. But I just love this the way that Jamie and the love that Jamie put into that project. And the way the jam print came together. And my other one would be the icon bust, a nice display piece that, again, I know some people didn't necessarily like the way that the Deep Woods montage happened around the back. Who looks at the back? It was a good display piece that is in a great affordable price range. So that made my top two as a result.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the price range is a great point.
It's still one that I don't have yet, so I don't have it in my top two. I put Jamie Johnson's fundraising art. I think did a fantastic job there. But for my second little point is one that wasn't mentioned in either licensed or unlicensed, and I think it's something that neither of you fellas have. But I've got the mock-up for the Phantom game for the Nintendo Switch that I was able to pick up at one of the Comic Cons that Ash was at. So that's been sitting in pride of place at the top of my Phantom display case over here. So I'm putting that in my top two list. Thank you very much, Ash, for passing that over to me.
Is that just so you can brag?
It's a very good, it's an awesome piece, and I know exactly where I'm going to put all the rest of the collector covers. And two, yes, it is very much the Larkin brand.
We both talked about some of the artwork we own, so why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can safely say that we might as well record the best product that we have purchased in 2025 now, and we could just say the video game, and then we could just cut and copy this for next year because it's going to have to be a pretty amazing item to be able to beat the video game. Not just the game itself, but yeah. So.
All right. Well, to move on because time is ticking. Look, we've just talked about some of the special stuff we own, and that's lovely to have nice things and to put them on shelves and that sort of stuff. But we really are in a lucky position here, and Jim, you do a power of work with Chronicle Chamber, and we certainly appreciate that. And everyone listening, I think, and watching at this stage, surely must appreciate the way that this all comes together. But being part of the Chronicle Chamber team is pretty special part of certainly our lives. And each year we do like to take a quick moment to pause and reflect back on the last 12 months and some of the cool stuff that we've got to experience by being part of the team. So, Steve, I might start with you. What's been the highlights for you this year in terms of your phantoming through Chronicle Chamber?
It has to be conversations with KFS. They're the big wigs that control the keys, to keep the keys to the kingdom. It's nice to know that they know that we're here, and that they appreciate what we're doing. So having that contact has been nice. And of course, the email conversations that we have with Tony DePaul and seeing the peek behind the curtain there are phenomenal, and that's not something that I take for granted. I think away from holidays for a bit and then come back. Oh, crikey, there's a couple of emails there from Tony. Oh, I better have a look, see what we're talking about. So I think I really appreciate those. And speaking with Ash and the updates on the game, really exciting stuff. And I hope to get down to Melbourne and catch up with him soon.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Jim?
Look, it's fair to say that we completely agree and are aware this is a self-congratulatory, ego-building 5 minutes of this podcast. We're well aware of that. But like what like for instance, we had a chat with KFS where they talked about some stuff that they liked what they're doing, some stuff that they would like to do with us in the future. And then there was also some stuff that they said, hey, we're not quite sure about how you do this and do this. Could you make this change or stuff like that as well? So I guess to be able to be aware of that, these are the guys, a multi-million-dollar company that are like, hey, this website, this bunch of, geeks actually are onto something or have a bit of an ear of the fan and stuff like that. Maybe we need to listen to them a little bit. That was a very nice moment to be able to have because it was kind of like, okay, like I think it was Dan that you said or Stephen, like, hey, they know we exist, but they also weren't threatened by us. Like every time, we've been critical of them in the past, but they weren't like, hey, you can't speak negative about us. They are aware that, hey, these guys have got an opinion, and they admitted that they need to listen to us in some parts as well. So that was very nice. I enjoyed being behind the scenes and having daily chats with Jamie Johnson during the art project with the fundraiser. Just being a sounding board for him while he was going through that. From a podcast point of view, I really enjoyed the George Djokovic podcast. I remember when we first started recording, he goes, oh, look, this will just be a short podcast. So we'll get maybe 20, 30 minutes out of it. And I think we ended up talking for close to 2 hours. And it was just talking to him, and then his passion was catchy. And just, it was one of those, every so often you have those podcasts where it's like you really, really enjoy having that podcast. It wasn't a chore. It was like meeting at a pub, and before you know it, you've spent 4 hours with the person, and it's like, oh crikey, I better get home to the kids and the wife and stuff. It was like that moment, and so yeah, so that there are a couple of moments that really stood out for me. from a personal, egotistic, selfish point of view for 2024?
Yeah, look, I'm probably on the same page as you guys, and it's the same thing every year, isn't it? I remember the year where the best Chronicle Chamber moment was the conversation we had with Cy Barry. You know, it's those moments you get to chat with people who, without this platform, you just would never meet or get a seat at the table. And like you've both said, to get a seat at the table with King Features was pretty cool, and hopefully there's some future plans for collaboration and all the rest of it there. We can't go too much more into that at the moment, but there'll be some stuff there to come, I hope. And then it is those behind the scenes moments, those conversations with Jamie Johnson about how is the project going, and seeing drafts of it, the confidence that Ash Tabernacles has with us as well, to talk about the process of the game, and Tony DePaul, as you've mentioned there as well, Steve. So, and like you said, Jim, probably that George Djokovic podcast was my favourite for the year as well. So, I'll stop rehashing what you guys have said and just give it a double thumbs up instead. Anyway, to stop talking about us and start talking about the Phantom world in general. Jerm, I might hand over to you for us to go through the overall reflection of the year that has been.
Okay, so as we discussed, all of the participators that you've heard, i.e. Christian, Scott, Sears, and Mikkel, have participated in this section as well, which is what we like. So we're going to be talking about our overall reflection for 2024. So we'll start off with Christian, and then we'll hand over to the guys, and then I'll go last on that one. So Christian said, overall, we have here in Germany a great amount of releases and comics, and all of them are highly produced, and I'm happy that the Phantom is still released here, because Phantom always had this fan base, but he didn't know if it was enough that they continued. Yes, we still got comics, and now we're getting Defenders of the Earth as well. Scott from US, who does our US reviews, and produced some brilliant points in his Defenders of the Earth mid-series review podcast, which was our last one as well. So make sure you have a look at that as well. He said, for too long in the US, the Phantom has been relatively absent in media outside of the newspaper comic strips, and that's a shame. 2024 marked not only a turning point in this area, it's the beginning, hopefully, of a resurgence of the character, starting with Mad Cave Studios' launch of Defenders of the Earth and their commitment to creating an expanded universe that includes Phantom, Mandrake, Flash Gordon, and Lothar. And I think the thing that I love about these guys' comments is that they're really bringing a worldwide perspective as well. So Suaz from India, who does our India reviews. Good year for the Phantom in the US with Mad Cave's Defenders of the Earth series and new series announcement. The game being closer to release and pre-orders were very exciting. And then he raised the point that from an Indian perspective, lesser issues this year, which is a little bit of a concern. And Mikkel, who jumped on board and helped us with Ivan, who was unable to participate, said, Egmont continues with its brick books, which is awesome. Now, when he's talking about brick books, he's literally talking about the hardcover books that are heavy enough to be used as a brick or a doorstop, or something that the wife can throw at their husband when they're annoyed with them. So that's some great points, and I love that they were able to be able to produce a worldwide perspective, but also from their country and region as well. Steve, do you want to give us your thoughts on 2024, and then Dan, you can go.
Okay, so for starters, I reckon Frew are knocking it out of the park with their covers. I reckon that was the hardest question of all on the survey. When I open it up, that's going to take me forever to try and figure out. So well done with the covers. The prevalence of the Fratelli Sparta stories is concerning, as their quality is often quite rubbish, and that's saying it really, really nicely, so we don't have to put beeps up or anything. My heart sank when I read the message from the publisher that alluded to Frew publishing a lot more Fratelli Sparta stories, thanks to Renee having a great supply of them. With that sort of quality, we can probably expect to see the paper quality go back to Butcher's paper, which gives us something to wrap our fish and chips in. I really hope I'm wrong, because those stories sometimes there's a diamond in the rough, but on the whole, they're quite expletive there. It's great to see an increase in countries publishing the Phantom. I hope they are quality, especially Mad Cave's publications, which at the moment I think they're on a balance of what they've done with the Phantom in Defenders of the Earth. And of course, getting more gameplay footage of the video game. That's always lapping that up. It's any news about that is great.
Yeah, look, I probably agree with a lot of what you said there, Steve. As we wrap up the year, the Frew covers are fantastic, and I'm really pleased that they continue to employ a variety of people, up and coming talent, established talent. The classics like Antonio Lemos are still getting a cover in. There's fantastic artists, and as you said, that's certainly the hardest part of the survey or considering each year. It is sad to see fewer Frew created stories for all of the reasons we've already talked about. I guess the other thing that is saddens me about Frew, I suppose, is that every year at this time we've talked about, well, what was the new merch that Frew brought out, the new bookmarks or the new posters or the new blah 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 whatever. This year there's nothing, and so it was a real shame to see that we didn't have a single Frew item in the best merch possibilities this year. And look, overall, probably less merch in general. I would say we probably had a glut of things with regard to the Boss Fight Studio figures over the past few years and whatever. I know Germ, has just about gone broke buying everything, but yeah, a lot of that stuff didn't necessarily appeal to me. And for me, I like it to be localish, I suppose. So anyway, on general, there seems to be less merch than in the past. As you said, it's great to see lots of new countries publishing them. I'd like to see, I guess, more books come from those guys. It's understand, and maybe that is the future for companies like Frew and Team Phantom, and maybe they need to be producing fewer issues per year. Once every 2 months, like Germany, or one of the German companies is probably a bit light on once a year, like lots of the other countries is very light on. So I hope we don't get to that. Defenders of the Earth was fantastic to see that come out from Mad Cave Studios, although I still have big question marks, as we discussed in the last podcast, around the treatment of the Phantom in that series, and I guess that raises questions for the series coming in 2025. But the absolute highlight, and we've already talked about it heaps, of 2024 was the constant anticipation of the game and the tidbits we keep getting released and drip fed out from Art of Play and from Ash. The footage that we're seeing, the pieces of gameplay, the artwork that we see, it's all really cool. And to know that Ash in particular, but also Matt and as the writer and the whole team, as we've met a couple of them on the podcast as well, really are perfectionists in their work and have the true essence of the Phantom at their core, more than most other creators that are going around at the moment. So I'm really excited for that one.
Look, I think my overall reflection from an Australian worldwide in general is very, very similar as what you have said. So rather than rehashing, I might just add a couple of little tidbits if you don't mind. One thing that was interesting is that there was only one Cyberry story that was published in 2024. I actually had to double check this. So I reckon that might be the least amount of stories that have been published by Frew, by Cyberry, since probably the 1960s when he first took over. Is that a trend? Or is that just an anomaly? Now, the other thing when we talked about the Sparta stories being being published, a lot of and then from a worldwide point of view, you're seeing the Basti stories being published more often. The US stories like from Herms, DC, and Charlton and King and all that. I have a theory now. This is not official. I have not been told this by anyone, but there has to be a reason why Frew and all these publishers around the world are not publishing Frew stories or Team Phantom End stories, but are publishing these other stories instead. And that has to be because they're cheaper to produce or to reproduce and to publish than what it is if you were to do a Team Phantom End story or even a Frew story. And I think that what it is if you're publishing these other stories, you don't have to pay like a royalty. It's only literally your one license that you pay King Features. But if you republish a Team Phantom End story, you have to pay Team Phantom End a fee, so to speak, to be able to not only, so you kind of have to pay a fee twice. The fee to King Features to be able to print the Phantom, and then you got to pay a fee to Team Phantom. And so a lot of these publishers are going, well, why would I want to pay two fees when I can just republish this Charlton story or this Fratelli Sparta story? I don't have to pay to reproduce that story. I only have to pay the one fee. And if that is the case, I wonder if Egmont, maybe, and Frew, maybe, or maybe more King Features need to change their model. So that's something that I think needs to be looked at, because I don't think the Phantom can make a worldwide impact if all we're getting are Fratelli Sparta stories, which some are good and a lot aren't, and an average, and they don't actually portray the true reflection of the Phantom, or these King Charlton stories, which are probably even worse, in my opinion, than the Fratelli Sparta stories.
Yes, well, it remains to be seen as we go into next year, I suppose, doesn't it?
Yeah. So talking about next year, big news of 2025. Do you have a big long run of you on a roll? Keep going.
Now, this is something that I've said for the last 2 years, so I'm sure if I say it for the third year, if I just keep saying it, eventually it will become true. But I think we're going to see the TV show news for 2025. Like I said, I've said it for the last 2 years. Let's go for a
I reckon
third
you've
year.
said the last 4 years.
Every year we've done
Um, now, I'm going to go a
No,
big
it was a
call
movie. You were talking about a movie for a while. Now you're on the TV show.
here. I did get it right for 1 or 2 years. I said that there was going to be a new USA publisher, and there was going to be like a video game or something like, or something like, no, TV show and the US publishing stories again. So I did get it right 1 year. Um, but I want to go right out on a limb, and going off what I said before, I think we're going to see a change at Frew.
Ooh,
2025, we will see a change. It will either be one of three. We'll either see a return to Frew in its Frew Crew heyday, i.e., new creator stories, being at conventions, being cutting edge, or we'll see them change a real tack and go back to the later days of Jim Shepherd with poor quality covers, poor quality paper, and poor quality stories, or we will see the end of Frew publishing stories and comics at all.
I very much hope it's the former.
Oh, I hope it's the first one where their 2024 was maybe a little bit of a lull year. Maybe it's taken a little bit of time for redirection with Glenn Ford stepping down from co-director to art director. And, maybe we're going to see a bit of a new shape now after 2024. But that's my big call for 2025, is that we will see change at Frew.
Dan, what about yourself, mate?
Well, I probably foresee some change as well, but at a different level. I reckon there's going to be a change at King Features level. We've only just heard the news, and Jeremy posted the story of T. Fogner leaving King Features, and she's been the person at the forefront of the Phantom for quite a number of years now. Quite a number of years. I
16.
think in 15 that she was with King Features or Hearst. I'm not sure she was with the Phantom for all of that 15 years, but certainly most of it. So having her leave, again, interpreting the way that the post that she put on LinkedIn, it would seem that the Hearst want to go in a different direction with, she was offered a reduced role And so that means someone else is coming in at a reduced role. And so what that means, maybe the King Features will be a bit more hands off. Maybe they've got half an eye on the fact that 6 years from now, the Phantom copyright expires basically, and many parts of the fandom become public domain. So I think we're going to start to see a change there. What that change looks like, I've actually got no idea. If I was going to predict, probably they'll let more expletive, insert expletive here, through. They'll let more non-real, not not my fandom, get through and be published. So I suspect that we might see a bit more rubbish. Hopefully, and on the positive side, the video game, and I've said, is not rubbish and far from it. Hopefully, it gets a lot of traction, and we see a lot of people want to take the fandom in that direction. We'll see how we go.
Cool. Now, before I do my own, Scott, with the triple threat of the video game and 2 new Phantom-related comic series hitting stands, I'd love to see the Phantom make the top 10 comics list in 2025. He's the original costumed hero, and he deserves not only a seat in the pantheon of costume crime fighters, but a throne among the top tier as well. With the way, yes, absolutely. With the way Mad Cave Studios has been quietly creating a contained universe between Defenders of the Earth and Flash Gordon, I think they could be the publisher to pull this feat off by cross-selling the hero among their other titles, since they also have an exceptional Dick Tracy series ongoing. I'd also love to see a Phantom Dick Tracy team up. I think there was a little Phantom cameo in the Dick Tracy newspaper strip a number of years ago, if you remember that. And Mikhail is very much looking forward to the video game, which I am also very much in the video game bandwagon. But also the video game getting noted in the video game world. I hope other people notice the video game, IGN and these other places notice the Phantom video game and review it well. I hope it gets really good reviews. So the big news is that it gets a 10 on IGN.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds good.
Well, 5 stars. It gets positive reviews everywhere.
Obviously, with our Best of Frew survey, there's prizes associated with participating in that. There's prizes associated with listening right through to the end of the podcast. You might have to so people can skip to this part if they want to. What we're going to do now is we'll go through and draw those prizes. So in the Wheel of Names, we've got everyone who is eligible to enter and also left an address that we can actually send something to. Sorry for those who maybe didn't quite get the address right or whatever, but I had to make sure it's something we could put on an envelope and it would go somewhere. So the first prize is going to be the Frew package, which is a messenger bag and a bunch of Frew merch, acknowledging that none of it's from 2024, but a Frew Crew badge will be amongst it. And let's pick a winner for the messenger bag and the stuff that Dudley and Co will put in it when it goes to you. And hopefully, if his sake, it's someone in Australia. I think that's going to be Sean Bassett. Sean, friend of the pod.
He always complains that he never wins anything as well. So that means it's one less thing I got to listen to him whinging about. So thank you, Dan.
All right, so we'll remove Sean from the pool. The next 4 winners are each getting some Chronicle Chamber merch. It's going to be a bit of a mystery pack as it comes your way for each of these 4 people. So Sean with the messenger bag, and who have we got as our first winner for the Chronicle Chamber merch? Ticking around. It's right on the line. Ken McPherson. Now, the way that they've spelt McPherson there, I reckon that might be a relation of Jeremy. So congratulations, Ken. And if you don't like Phantom merch yourself, I'm sure Jeremy will love it. Maybe this is how Jeremy got top 2 in the covers. Getting his dad or his brother or whatever it was to vote. Okay, the third prize, Christopher Bierman. Congratulations, Christopher. A Chronicle Chamber care package is going to be on its way to you. 2 more to go. Here we go, Lyndon. That name has come around a couple of times, but not quite stopped on it. We're right on the line again, but it's going to land on Stuart overall. So congratulations, Stuart. Thank you for participating in the survey. And we'll make sure that that gets posted out to you as soon as we can. Last prize winner for the night. As the wheel goes round, where will it stop? Lyndon just scrolls past again. Very close a lot of times, but not quite the cookies because it's landed on Adam. No last name for Adam, but we do have a postal address. So congratulations, Adam. We'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. And
Assuming the very first Adam also didn't have a last name as well, so it's good to see. Going full circle.
there you go. Full circle. All right. Very good. Well, congratulations to Sean, Ken, Christopher, Stuart, and Adam. Keep an eye on your mailboxes, and you'll receive a little package shortly.
Awesome. So, look, thank you everyone for listening or watching us. Sorry about the time. We've tried our best to keep it 2 hours. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. Remember, we want to hear your thoughts, feedback, and opinions on our social media platforms or over at the YouTube channel. Remember, if you comment, you automatically go into our draw for our monthly competition of free Chronicle Chamber swag. We've had various past winners from all around the world. We're based in Australia, but our listeners, the stuff goes out to those in Sweden, Australia, USA, India, Norway. So, haven't had anyone from Germany. So how about some fans from Germany comment on our stuff as well. Now, as we made mention at the start, Steve made mention that we are episode 298. Now, a little sneak behind the curtain, we are going to be having like a couple of A and B issues because we do have something planned for episode 300. Don't want to talk for too long because this podcast is too long already, but podcast 300 is going to be a special one. Not only is it going to be special for 300, but we're also going to try and release it on the birthday of the Phantom. So it has to be a special podcast. We are in the middle of, or towards the end of getting that nailed down and talked about it. Now, if you are our Patreon, you get first dibs. You would have received an email informing you of, hey, this is coming up. So Patreons get your first access to participate. And like what we said throughout this podcast, it is a privilege to talk to creators. And a little bit of a hint, if you participate in this podcast, you will join us in that privilege to be able to talk to some creators. So keep an eye on our platforms for notifications, or now is the perfect time to sign up as a Patreon because you get first dibs with this. And there's also for 2025, all our Patreon seasonal draws are going to be the stickers from the finished stuff, which is official Phantom merchandise. So hope you're still with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. From myself, happy Phantom.
500
Happy
years
Phantom,
ago,
everyone.
he washed
Happy
ashore the
Phantom.
sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds